This is the Word Around Westwood, a UCLA Bruins podcast. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Bruin 24/7 on YouTube and to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Connor Morrissette, and joining me today to talk some UCLA football, it's Jack Savage. How you doing, Jack?
Yo, how's it going? I'm doing well. Excited to be here and talk some Bruins football, baby.
Sure. So let me set the table first. We will start by reviewing the official visit weekend, the final one for UCLA. Then we can get into some depth chart stuff for the current team heading into the season, which just keeps getting closer and closer. And then we will finish with some questions that we asked of people on our message board over at bruin247.com. If you're not a subscriber over there, you didn't have the opportunity to ask some questions. Well, we hope you'll subscribe. But if you're still on the fence about that, you can ask a question in the YouTube chat and we will answer that as well. So feel free to post anything you would like in the chat and we will put it up on the screen. It's a great day to be alive and be a Bruin. That is from the four letters. Thank you so much for tuning in. Right on cue. Perfect timing there. A quick basketball note. Chris and I will go live immediately after Nicola Costa Rica commits, whether that's to UCLA, what we're hoping for, or another school remains to be seen. The bidding process is ongoing for that recruitment right now. Dusty May going to the Dallas Mavericks, of course, changed that one a little bit. So UCLA looks to be in a good spot there after Kentucky had some early momentum. So if you're looking for some basketball talk, just be on the lookout for the commitment of Costa Rica. And Chris and I, whenever that is, we'll have a show, regardless if it's UCLA or another program. Okay, Jack, the final official visit weekend is in the books, and UCLA got a commitment. Aiden Ray, a three-star offensive tackle from Texas. He committed fresh off the visit. What's his story? What can you share with our audience about Aiden Ray?
Yeah, so Aiden Ray from Plano West in Plano, Texas. He was only recently offered by the Bruins on June 1st, which was also the same day he received an offer from USC. So some of the guys that maybe both schools that, they didn't initially land, they casted a wider net, and Aiden Ray was one of those guys, and he scheduled an official visit to UCLA immediately, before the dead period started, and really wanted to get to campus. And before he even took the OV going into the weekend, things kind of were trending towards UCLA being able to land him. And so then the weekend happened, and then while he was on his visit, he committed. And yeah, he becomes the fifth offensive lineman, I believe, in their 27 class. He's only a three-star, a little bit, I'd say underrated. I mean, he's a big dude, 6'6", 300 pounds. He plays majority right tackle at Plano West. And I mean, the upside, you can turn on the tape. He's oozing with potential and tremendous upside. And 86-inch wingspan, I believe. He's just a big dude that he may not be the most nimble right now, I'd say. Like, still looks a bit stiff at times, but you just see him in one-on-one in pass protection. Like, he'll just run a guy past the pocket, past the quarterback with these long arms and just, negate their whole pass rush. And he can, move guys in the run game as well. So he's an exciting guy, exciting tackle that I think this class really needed as well with Thurman Lyles they got a couple weeks ago. Along with Weston Hicks, Jackson Roper, and then Gage Etsty, a couple interior guys. So yeah, it's a great pickup for them, and he's excited to be a Bruin.
We'll answer some questions later about what the rest of this class looks like. Neither of us think UCLA is done recruiting on the offensive line. Lucas Roa's commitment still looms out there, so we'll have to see what he ends up doing. If he doesn't end up committing, it's possible UCLA pivots to another target, but that remains to be seen. So I'm with you, Jack. Anytime you can get someone with that size, 6'5.5", 300 pounds, who you also like as a person and you think projects to be an offensive tackle for you, we all know at that position, you don't have to come in and play right away. So I think obviously you want to get the best talent you can, but if in that first year with a new staff, you are not recruiting the high profile offensive linemen and you will get some guys who need some time to develop, I'm totally fine with what they're doing. And I have a lot of trust in in Chris Smith to develop these guys the right way. He has a great track record from his time all the way back to Holy Cross and then JMU. So I'm excited to see what he can do with some of these guys, assuming the staff stays at UCLA for a long time, which I think right now, before they've even played a game, we're all hoping for. So that was the big news from the official visit weekend. The rest of the guys outside of Eli Woodard were all committed, but let's now jump over to Eli Woodard, Jack, who you had a chance to talk to. The former USC 4-star receiver commit backed off that pledge a few weeks to a month ago. Miami's in the mix. Cal's in the mix with him. He takes the UCLA official visit, but the general kind of understanding, at least from my perspective, is that UCLA is pretty firmly running third in that recruitment right now. What are your thoughts on that? And does Cal still seem like the team to beat there?
Yeah, so it's definitely a 3-horse race, as you mentioned, with those 3 schools, with UCLA being, I don't know if I'd even call it a distant third anymore. I will say that they made up ground this past weekend. Going into the weekend, it kind of felt like it was more of a, I don't want to call it a courtesy visit, but just Eli popping in to check things out. But after talking to him on the phone on Sunday, right after the visit, he really enjoyed his couple of days in Westwood and what he saw, and he was able to, take his OV with his Chaparral teammate, Kiko Farinas as well, who's committed. And he's got a really close relationship with wide receivers coach Colin Lockett. Those two are tight. And he really, he felt the love from the entire staff, which is a recurring theme to when these guys get on campus. Like, the staff is very intentional with their time, and, they want to be present with these guys and kind of just show them what they have to offer. And so, yeah, Cal and Miami, I'd say they're the front runners, with Cal, I'd say, being in the pole position right now. But, if things take a turn and he wants to commit to UCLA, I know they'll take him. He'd be their 5th wide receiver in their class. And there's, questions about whether UCLA would want to add a 5th wide receiver, because that is a handful of guys at the same position, especially at the wideout position. After adding Matthew Gregory 2 weeks ago, the 4-star from Pennsylvania. But, if Eli wants to come on board, then they're going to take him. But I wouldn't necessarily hold my breath on that. It looks like he'll be a Golden Bear, but never know how these things are going to shake out. When I asked him if he has a timeline in mind, he said probably two-ish weeks or so, but he wants to kind of get this whole thing done sooner rather than later. So, yeah.
Seems like a commitment is coming soon from him, like you just said. So I think it's significant he got on campus at UCLA, because in this transfer portal era, it doesn't work out at your first school. Naturally, if the same staff that recruited you out of high school is at a school that you took an OV to, you'll naturally kind of at least check in with them, I would assume. So always a good opportunity to sell your program and to sell what you can do for a player, even if this first recruitment doesn't end up working out. So that'll be something to pay attention to. We have a question from the 4 letters. After losing out on Brackney, who flipped to Indiana, does UCLA go after another linebacker? So we also have that question from our mailbag. But that was the other big piece of news, Jack. Kane Brackney, he had taken that Indiana official visit a couple of weeks ago. He ends up flipping, leaving Mike Davis and Colton McKibben as the only 2 linebackers in the Bruins class for 2027. We're trying to kind of figure out how they're going to pivot. One guy we heard about, Miles Baker, who is committed to Cal to play safety right now. He was on an unofficial visit to UCLA over the weekend. That recruitment is still ongoing, and maybe they want him to play linebacker. Outside of that, I don't know if they have a specific replacement lined up, and things will just kind of have to shake out with this Miles Baker recruitment. But any thoughts on where UCLA pivots to?
Yeah, I think you just mentioned it, Miles Baker. They see a guy who, he has a safety build right now, but, a big frame that can put on a couple more LBs and could easily play linebacker at the next level and be kind of just this hybrid type guy. And like you mentioned, he was on campus over the weekend. He canceled his OV to LSU and then made his way back to Westwood after taking an OV a couple weeks ago. So that's one I keep an eye on really closely. He is committed to Cal right now, but I know UCLA is pushing pretty hard for him, and he could easily fill that 3rd linebacker role that Brackney just left. So,
and that would be an exciting addition. He's a very good football player. So whether it is linebacker, whether it is safety, just getting him in the class would be significant. So the other guys, excuse me, who are on the visit over the weekend, Khalil Terry, the 4-star safety from Tustin, Kiko Farinas, who you mentioned, Jack, the 3-star receiver from Chaparral, Deuce Jones-Drew from De La Salle up there in Northern California, the 3-star running back, Mike Davis, the 3-star linebacker from Mater Dei. You've spoken to a couple of the guys who were on these trips. What was the vibe from some of these guys who are committed? We don't really expect anyone from that group to back off of their pledge currently. It seems like they're locked in with UCLA. Any updates on just what went down and what happened over the weekend from those guys?
Yeah, it sounded like, speaking to a few, that just the resounding theme from those 4 commits was just, affirmation and confirmation that, okay, I committed here. Let me take my official visit with my family. Let's see how this goes. And then coming out of the weekend, it's all positive and it's okay. I feel good about the decision I made. I feel like this is my home. I see myself playing here, being here for this staff, for this school, and nothing but positive things out of those 4. DJD, son of Maurice Jones-Drew, he was always destined to be a Bruin, and I know he's fired up and jacked up to come to campus and kind of just start carving out his own legacy. His dad he's in the Hall of Fame, the UCLA Athletics Hall of Fame, for a reason, because he's one of the best players in program history. And DJD, he's making it clear that, well, yes, my dad was this, Titan when he was here, that DJD wants to, just forge his own legacy and not only carry on with what his dad did, but be his own player. And that's just an exciting legacy commit, because everyone remembers watching their own Jones-Drew, back in the mid-2000s at the Rose Bowl. So it's going to be pretty exciting to get him on campus. And then the other 3, they, like you mentioned, they seem destined and locked in to be Bruins come next year, and I would be surprised if anything else happened otherwise.
The last bit of recruiting news from the weekend. So the last quarterback on UCLA's board, Brady Edmonds, who is committed to Ohio State. He took his Ohio State official visit, and he hasn't exactly shut down his recruitment, but it sounds like that visit went well for him. And now, after it maybe looked like UCLA, following his official visit there, had a real chance to flip him. I think they still have a chance. There's a lot of time before that December early signing period, but I think Ohio State, it sounds like, did what they needed to do on that visit to keep him in the fold. And the reality is UCLA might not get a quarterback in 2027.
Yeah, I was told that it went exceptionally well in Columbus. Brady, he arrived a couple days before his OV to compete in a camp in which he performed very well in. And then the whole weekend went off very, very great for Ryan Day and for the Edmonds family. They both kind of, there was kind of an unsettling, are you guys going to take another quarterback? Am I comfortable with a 2-quarterback class, and so forth? And from what I was told, by the end of the weekend, all those concerns were kind of, smoothed out, and everything was they came to a mutual understanding of how they want to move forward. And with that being said, before the weekend, I had a hunch that he would flip to UCLA. Coming out of this weekend, I'm now leaning more towards him staying with Ohio State. And if you ask me tomorrow, that could change, right back to the Bruins' favor. So it's still very up in the air right now. Feels 60-40 that he'll be a Buckeye. But I know after speaking with him directly after his OV to UCLA, he was extremely torn, and he loved everything he saw from UCLA and the staff, and that he acknowledged himself that this is going to be a really, really difficult decision for him. And I know he wants to make it within the next 2 to 3 weeks, if not sooner as well.
Which is understandable. Like you said, things are fluid, but that's sort of the latest there. And we've talked a lot about the quarterback position for UCLA in 2027, Jack, where we didn't feel like, whether it was Dane Weber, Brady Edmonds, Ryan Rakowski committed to Nevada, he was never really on their board, but he was a guy who we thought it might make sense to pivot to potentially if they miss out on some of these other names, which they have. But like, it's not the end of the world with the transfer portal, with Nico Iamaleava potentially having another year with the Bruins. The way that position works, where you can really only play one guy. If you are not 1000% sold on a high school quarterback, it's just not worth the financial investment. And that seems to me where UCLA is. And I give them a lot of credit for making that decision. Now, if Edmonds comes back into the fold and it's on a deal that UCLA is happy with, then that makes a lot of sense. But I don't think it's worth really bending over backwards financially to make one of these quarterbacks happy when that position is just so in flux year to year.
Yeah, 1000%. My personal philosophy is you kind of want to build your team, at least through the high school ranks, when it comes to the trenches, your O-line and D-line. And then you can go portal hunting for your skill guys, for a big name quarterback, or not even a big name quarterback, but just for a guy where it didn't work out at one place for one reason or the other. And there's no reason that you want to, put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, and go after a guy if you're not sure, 100% sure that he's going to be the real deal. And, no one's really 100% sure with these high school quarterbacks, especially. So I'd say, yeah, it's not the end of the world if they don't get a quarterback, which, it looks like they may not. And I would be perfectly comfortable with them doing just that. So I wouldn't worry or freak out. I just take a deep breath and be like, okay, it's fine. The 2028 class for quarterbacks, it's absolutely loaded. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Slap Patra says, "Fours up, baby." Thank you for watching, listening, commenting, everything. We really appreciate it. Any final recruiting thoughts from you, Jack? Again, we're going to get into a bunch of questions later in the show, so we will not totally stop talking about recruiting. But before we move on to some depth chart stuff for the upcoming season, any final thoughts from you? If not, happy to just move on.
I guess I would put a bow on this whole official visit season and Chesney and the staff's first time hosting all these guys for their OVs in Westwood. The theme of everything was just, one, I didn't hear a bad thing, which you kind of rarely do ever coming out of these weekends. But over the last month, it just seemed that, especially at UCLA, so different in years past, and just the effort put forth towards these guys and their families to show them not only what this football program and university has to offer, but the entire city of LA. We heard all the stories about them going to Dodger Stadium, Rodeo Drive, it's escaping me, the observatory, Griffith Observatory. Yes. Beverly Hills, the Hollywood sign, Manhattan, Santa Monica. They just showed them everything. And when you're in LA, why would you not? So they really took advantage with all of that. And it was just awesome to hear all these great stories that these guys had coming out of their OVs, just kind of buzzing. And, it's paying off right now, because you're seeing the guys they're getting and the efforts that they're putting in. They're reaping those rewards right now. So we'll see if they can keep up that momentum.
The word genuine continues to come out of these visits, and people who have gone through this process before and been in the business of college athletics, and just people who know what they're talking about. Like, it's not just a parent who, oh, my son is having this great experience. Like, we've just heard from multiple people whose opinions I really trust, that this staff is very genuine and has done a really nice job. I can tell you a quick official visit story, Jack, when it doesn't go well. So when I was covering USC, one of the biggest high school recruits that they landed, Jakeem Stewart, who's going to be a sophomore defensive lineman for the Trojans next year. There's a story. He's from Louisiana. He took an official visit to LSU, and they went to a game, and it was pouring. And on his official visit, they gave the staff, or whoever was in charge, gave one of the high profile recruits a jacket and a poncho so he would stay dry, and they didn't give one to Jakeem Stewart. Oh. Like, I'm not going to LSU. Screw that. So sometimes stuff can trickle out like that.
That's funny.
That always comes to mind. We didn't hear anything like that with the UCLA visits, and that must have been a unofficial visit for him, or I guess it could have been an official during the season. But either way, that visit did not go well, and he wound up at USC. Okay, let me move on over to doing this on the fly is always fun. I was going to talk about our promo, but
lost it.
It's not working for some reason. Here, I don't want to delete anything. I just want to play the promo. Okay, that's enough. We're just going to move on. Okay, Jack. So depth chart stuff. We released some of our thoughts on how we felt like UCLA would line up against Cal after spring ball. I think the thing I want to start with this is there's been some talk about Scooter Jackson and whether he will be eligible, whether he won't. Remember, the first name that Bob Chesney mentioned when we asked him who's standing out to was Scooter Jackson way back at the beginning of spring. And then Jackson ended up running into some academic issues and missed the rest of spring. He was featured in some UCLA athletics photo shoots, which led us to believe, oh, it looks like he's eligible. I checked in with someone who said that is still up in the air. And I did hear about a contingency plan from a source, which I thought was pretty interesting. So if Jackson is not eligible, there's a world, Jack, where they move DJ Barksdale, the nickel, to corner, which we saw him play some corner at the end of spring, kind of made us scratch our heads a little bit, but that was the reason why. And then they would move Cole Martin to play nickel. Before we get into some of this depth chart stuff, thoughts on that?
That's interesting. That'd be really interesting. I feel like, I mean, the secondary, we've said it over and over again. It feels like it's going to be the strength of this team, the 2026 Bruins. And Barksdale is more than capable of playing on the outside. I wouldn't necessarily say he has the size to do that, but I mean, he's a fiery competitor, and he would be up for the challenge. I mean, moving Cole down to nickel, I mean, the safety room is stacked, so they wouldn't really miss a beat either. But I mean, they're kind of loaded at the corner position, so I would be shocked if that's what they do. End up moving those pieces around like that. With Aaron Williams as well is more than a capable slot guy, so that'll be interesting to see if Scooter can't go. So we'll see.
I think they trust Barksdale so much that
sure
factors into that. And good news, Jack, I figured out how to get the banner that I was looking for up on the screen. If you like what you're hearing and want to make sure you're up to speed on recruiting, the transfer portal, and wall-to-wall team coverage, make sure to subscribe to Bruin247.com. That's Bruin247.com for all the latest on UCLA athletics. We got a 60% off sale right now. And remember, all of the great coverage that we provide when you subscribe, it also comes with Paramount Plus. If you're into the UFC, it's all on Paramount Plus. They got a bunch of great shows, so we hope you can check out that deal. And if you're listening on the podcast side, I apologize for trying to get something on the screen for YouTube. It wasn't working. You're probably listening, scratching your head like, what the heck is he talking about? We're going to get this all ironed out. This is only our second ever live show, so appreciate your patience with that. Let's start on offense, though, Jack. So I thought that defensive note was worth breaking up off the top. But on offense, quarterback, don't really need to spend much time on it. Nico Iamaleava will be the starter for the Bruins. What's more interesting is who will be the backup. Will it be Nico's brother Madden? Will it be Ty Diefenbach? That is a position battle that will continue into fall camp. And once they make a decision on that, I'm excited to write that story because I do think that is an important part of the team heading into the year. If Nico were to unfortunately miss a game, then we want to know who would come in. It looked like, based on what happened in spring, that Madden would be the backup, but I was pretty impressed with Diefenbach, especially as the spring went on, and I'm excited to see how that competition unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, the QB2 spot, it's always such a underrated, sometimes overlooked, part of the team. Coming from a huge Bengals fan myself, just ask how our QB2 has been over the last 3 years when Joe Burrow goes down. Like, that position is so important. So having Madden and Ty, who both of them, I'd say, got tremendously better within that month of spring ball, honestly. Madden, you mentioned Ty improving. I'd say Madden also improved very well, to the point where he was taking, I wouldn't say the lion's share of the 2 reps, but like we saw in the spring game, he was taking, a lot of them. And so it's going to be an exciting battle to watch. I'm excited for it.
Me too. At the running back spot, we didn't see a lot of Wayne Knight because he was hurt after his 1,000-yard season at James Madison. We saw a ton of Anthony Woods and Javion Thomas. Being around college football the way we have, Jack, it's rare for an offense to truly rely on 3 running backs. It happens sometimes, but more often than not, you're looking at 2 guys who will get a lot of the work. And in some offenses, it's 1, obviously. Is there a world where we see all 3 guys feature heavily? Because Knight was out, but I just have a hard time coming to terms with him maybe not having a big role, but like Woods and Thomas just look so good in the spring. Pretty interesting competition, and it's a good place to be when you have three guys for one spot. But how do you envision that one shaking out?
Yeah, Woods and Thomas, excuse me, they were great over the spring. While Knight, he was banged up and we didn't really get to see a lot of him, but he's coming from the JMU staff, the JMU offense, where he thrived and excelled. So there's no, we're going to see a lot of Wayne Knight this upcoming season. But like you mentioned, a lot of it is just, will it be a two-back system, which kind of is college football. But I'd say in the beginning of the season, we'll see these three guys. I don't know how heavily each one will be in terms of how they split the reps and the carries, but it wouldn't surprise me if the first, 2 or 3 games of the season, they kind of work in these three and then maybe even a couple others just to see really where they fit, how the groove that the offense is with, all these three guys and their different skill sets. So yeah, I'd say in the beginning, wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 3-back approach. And then as we move on into the season, whether 1 or 2 of these guys, jumps out, then they'll probably stick with the hot hand. So like you said, it's a good problem to have. And I'm excited just to see Wayne Knight when he's fully healthy, hopefully for fall camp, to see what he can do. But, Thomas and Woods, they're just as impressive over the month of April and spring ball. So it's going to be exciting to watch.
Over the course of a season, they will certainly need all three guys.
Yeah.
When they kick off at Memorial Stadium in Cal to begin the year, I just feel like one guy from that group probably will be the odd man out, and we'll have to see how that position battle unfolds, because all three guys really look like they can go, so that's exciting. Wide receivers, Brian Rowe stole the show.
Yep.
In the spring. The South Carolina second-year player was tremendous. He transferred from South Carolina. Samaj Morgan, I continue to be really impressed with him. Landon Ellis looked very consistent. We've talked about it on the show before, Jack. The X factor in this room is Leland Smith, because on paper, he needs to be that big boundary, go up and make a 50-50 catch for a first down or a touchdown guy. And he was banged up for a lot of the spring. They released that video of him running a 40-yard dash, and he was cooking with his big size. He had a great year at San Jose State last year after starting out at Purdue, where he didn't do too much as a true freshman. I like that group. I think there's some high ceiling potential there. But to me, if UCLA is better than we expect, I think Leland Smith is going to have a big year.
I agree. He will be the X factor out of this wide receiver group, from the guys we saw in the spring to our expectations. Aiden Mizell, the transfer from Florida, he didn't do much in the spring, which was kind of disappointing. And then we saw other guys, Shane Rosenthal, who had a good spring, then he got hurt for a bit, and then he came back in a big way. But the stars were Brian Rowe Jr. and Morgan by far, which both of those guys are kind of smaller slot guys who can play on the outside. So they're going to need this big body, and Leyland is that guy. And then you have Landon Ellis, who will be as reliable and productive as they come. So I'm not worried about that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, who does emerge on that outside, and whether that is one of the smaller guys moving outside, which we saw them do a lot in the spring. They moved around so many guys. So they didn't really want to just confine, Brian Rowe to the slot or Samaj Morgan to the slot. So it's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully these guys can all come back healthy in the fall for fall camp and really see where this takes off. Because like you said, this offense, it has a high ceiling, but you still need this big body wide receiver on the outside to take it to a whole other level. And we'll see if Leyland can be that guy.
At tight end, we project Josh Pfeiffer, the James Madison transfer, to start. He's more of a blocking tight end, not much of a threat in the receiving game. The two threats in the receiving game, Braden Lofton, Noah Fox-Flores, and then Harry Lodge from Wake Forest. He wasn't with the team in the spring, but is on the roster now, so he'll get a chance to show his prowess as a receiver. I think Noah Fox-Flores, as a wideout tight end, a receiving tight end, has the highest ceiling out of that group, and we saw a lot of him in the spring. Lofton made a couple nice plays as well. Lodge is huge at like 6'7", so there are some receiving threats there, but it would surprise me, I think, if one of these guys even got to 300 receiving yards this year. I expect in the air, Nico Iamaleava will primarily target his wide receivers.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's what we saw in the spring as well. But it is going to be kind of a committee approach because each guy you just mentioned kind of has a different skill set and brings something unique to the table. And they're going to run a lot of 12 and 13 personnel, so there's going to be a lot of tight ends on the field at the same time, and they're going to need all these guys. So yeah.
Offensive line, we both agree the starting left tackle looks like it's going to be Jordan Davis. Do you agree on that, Jack?
Yes, I do.
Yep. So I don't really know what it looks like behind him, where you have Mac Industad from Eastern Michigan, Katie Arnold, Jensen Somerville, JD Dean, who just changed his last name. He was JD Rayner. He's now JD Dean. You kind of need a big season from Davis, because behind him it can get a little bit sketchy. At the guard spot, another big offseason topic. We feel like they have three guys for two spots. Carter Sweezy, the James Madison transfer, Eugene Brooks, who was the left guard starter last season, and then Julian Armella, who played some right guard, but the staff seems to be very high on. Three guys who we feel like are all starting caliber players, but there are only two guard spots. In my opinion, I think Carter Sweezy is locked in at one of them, and then I imagine it will be Brooks with Armella kind of the odd man out. But another good problem to have, where they feel like they have three guys who can play at a high level and are capable of starting, which is always encouraging.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Eugene Brooks, I like him staying at the left guard. They moved him from the right side to the left side all throughout spring. So we'll see where that lands. And then Sweezy looked great. And Armella, the staff really, really liked him. And he was fun to watch during the spring as well. He got significantly better as time went on. So three spots for two guys. I mean, the center position, I think it's going to be Sam Yoon, but there's a world where one, it's just Riley Robel off the bat. And then two, maybe Sweezy takes center reps. Like the interior, there's so much you can play around with, and good problems to have with all this versatility among those three spots. So we'll see where that lands.
We have a question about the center spot later, but we'll start talking about it now because that's the next spot on the depth chart. So you mentioned Sam Yoon at center. I think Riley Robel will be the starting center, so he's listed there on our depth chart. But that's a competition that will continue into fall camp. Yoon missed the vast majority of the spring, which allowed Rebel to get a lot of reps. So pay attention to that position battle, arguably the most important one on the team. And then at right tackle, we both agree that Hall Schmidt will be the starter. And then that same group of backups who I mentioned earlier, they will fill out behind him. But the hope is Schmidt and Davis can stay healthy, because they are true starting caliber tackles with a lot of experience. And then behind them, not totally sold on what UCLA will be getting. So another big storyline. Moving over to the defense, Jack, you put this together at edge. So here, West, Scott Taylor, Aiden Gobera, and then the X factor, a little bit similar to Leland Smith on offense, Ryan McCullough, who was at Cal last year. He's battled injuries in his career. He projects to be that fourth edge rusher for UCLA. And I like the top three guys. McCullough is a little bit inconsistent with those injuries. If you can get a fourth contributor, that's significant.
Yeah, 1,000%. We saw West, we heard all this hype going into the spring, and then we saw him live up to it. So we'll see if we can carry that momentum into the fall. Scott Taylor took a noticeable leap from last year to where he is now, and where defensive coordinator Colin Hitchler is placing all this responsibility on him, moving the young stud all over the place from standing up, getting down. So he's going to be fun to watch. And then, Aiden Gobera, he's going to be a huge piece in their rotation along the edge and even in the interior at times. And then, the fourth rusher, who's it going to be? You mentioned Ryan. Could it be Lucian Holland, who had a pretty good spring game? It will be exciting to see who emerges.
In the middle of that defensive line, we like some of these guys, but we don't know if they have a true difference maker. Tyson Ford from Cal, Darren Dinagohe from Rutgers, who was at James Madison before with Bob Chesney the year before he was at Rutgers. AJ Fuamono, who is a returner from last year's team. Amir Washington, the transfer from Texas Tech. Those four guys project to be the main interior guys for the Bruins. Ford has a very high ceiling, but he has struggled mightily with injuries in his career. Started at Notre Dame, then went to Cal, now at UCLA. He was healthy for a lot of the spring, but remember, Jack, there was that one practice where he got a little bit banged up, and you're just kind of nervous watching him because of his injury history. So he probably has the highest ceiling. I think that group can be good. I don't know if they can be great. And when talking about UCLA's ability to stop the run in the Big Ten, when you're going up against a team in the cold where you know that they're running the ball more often than not, can you stop us? These guys are going to have to answer the bell, and we'll see if they can do it. Another big storyline.
Yeah, this is the position group that I'm most concerned about, that I think has the most question marks of the entire team, honestly. The whole defense seems like it did improve from last year, which not saying that much, but there's still red flags on this interior. Not that they don't have great capable players, because they do. We just mentioned who they have in their resumes and how experienced they are, but they're going to need one or two of these guys to really take that next leap and hold it down, because they have three really talented linebackers behind them. And if they can keep them free, keep them clean, then they'll be able to make plays. And they just can't be pushed around like we saw so much of the interior of this defense happen to them last year. And that's why they got ran over seemingly every game. And so we'll see who emerges. Yeah, that's what I got for you.
Enter Xenon with a topical question. Is Maxwell Roy not panning out? So based on what I saw from him in the spring, when UCLA was in some specific short yardage situations on defense, Roy was out there at times with the top group. He was not out there consistently with the top group during other situations, just during like the 11-on-11 red zone period or 11v11, started midfield and have to work your way down. But short yardage, he was in there. In some specific position drills, I didn't feel like he moved around all that great. The size, it speaks for itself. He's a huge guy. There's a reason he started his career at Ohio State. He's someone, Jack, where I don't think he's ready to really help the team early in the year, but because of the ceiling that he has, because of his size, if he can get his conditioning down, move a little bit better, he could help them later in the season. That's my take on things. I wouldn't expect to see a ton of him at the beginning of the year, just because he's still a relatively young guy in his second year learning this defense. It's just he needs to work on some things. Maybe in short yardage situations here or there he will play, but later in the year, especially if a guy goes down, I could see him playing a bigger role.
Yeah, that's fair to say. I know going into the spring, I was really excited to watch him and see what he could do. And I don't want to say it was disappointing, because he flashed and he had his moments, but I guess my expectations were just a little higher than from what I saw. And like you mentioned, they'll have these certain sub packages that they'll be in where he'll be in that middle of the defense, short yardage, goal line, and they'll expect a lot from 99 to at least get a push and hold it down. And we didn't really see a lot of that in the spring. So I like what you said about his impact, may not be immediate right away. And granted, it's a kind of an unsung, underappreciated, you don't get a lot of praise position anyways as a defensive tackle. So yeah, we'll see if he can be an eventual contributor and an impact player, whether that's in October or November, really when conference play begins. They're going to need him to step up, because in the Big Ten, they're going to run the ball right at you, and you're going to have to be able to stop it. And they got him in the portal for this reason. So he's got to step up.
Linebacker is a position we're both very excited about. A lot of that is because of Sammy Omosigho, who transferred in from Oklahoma, who played every game for the Sooners last year, but didn't start any games. He started a few in his career previously, but last year he came off the bench, but was a big contributor in Brett Venables' defense. And now will be a guy who I don't think will come off the field at all for the Bruins. And then playing alongside him, it might be Jalen Woods. It could be Donovan Palat. And then Drew Spinagati, who is a great story. Started playing at Holy Cross under Chesney, then James Madison, and now UCLA for his final year of eligibility. I like that core. I like that group. You just got to hope and pray that Sammy Omassi goes out there every game because his ceiling is high. He has a chance to be an NFL draft pick. This is his last go in college. And if he has a big year, the sky's the limit for the defense, I think.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Sammy Soup, that's your green dot guy. He's the leader of this defense. He's going to get everybody lined up right. We saw it in the spring, how vocal he is, how much of a leadership role that he took on really as a new guy in this new defense. And to carry this strong tradition of linebacker play that UCLA is known for, I think he's going to raise that bar this upcoming season. And then whether that is whoever plays next to him, whether that's Jalen Woods or Donovan Plott, I think either of those guys are more than capable of stepping up and playing the will spot. But Sammy is going to be the straw that stirs the drink. So I'm excited to watch him this season. And like you said, fingers crossed that they're going to need him to stay healthy because he's going to be the engine that makes this thing go.
Moving to the secondary, with or without Scooter Jackson, we still feel like that has the potential to be the strength of the defense. And just to reset the table with Scooter Jackson, he was in there at the beginning of spring, starting at the cornerback spot alongside, why am I forgetting his name? Who was the other cornerback?
Pleasant?
Yes. Well, we project
Stafford.
Pleasant to be
Robert
Stafford or Dante Lovett. But anyway, Scooter Jackson was having a great spring, and then he was academically ineligible, missed a bunch of practices, and his eligibility is up in the air heading into the season. There's been no final decision yet, so it's not like they're playing without him, but they may not be playing with him, so that'll be something to monitor. If he's not a starting corner, we project Roderick Pleasant to be one of them when he is fully healthy after recovering from his shoulder surgery. And then on the other side, if Jackson isn't able to go, I mentioned earlier about how I could see, just based on having a conversation, DJ Barksdale, who was playing nickel, could slide over to play corner, but you have a bunch of good options. Robert Stafford. You also have Dante Lovett, who had some nice plays, the Virginia Tech transfer. It seems like they're in a good spot at the cornerback position. But Jack, I'm really excited to see what Roderick Pleasant can do under this new staff now that he's finally healthy in fall camp. He was non-contact all throughout the spring. That's a guy with an NFL future potentially, and he could really have a big year. Very exciting.
Yeah, I'm stoked to watch him. We know how fast he is, the speed that he brings to this entire defense, especially on the outside. He's an exciting guy. We saw what he did last year. Didn't see much in the spring, of course, because he was coming off that shoulder. And then, like you mentioned, guys that if Scooter can't go for, whether that's the first game or whether that's longer than that, we'll see. But Dante Lovett, Jace McMillan, those guys were impressive as well. Whether they move Barksdale to the outside, we saw what he can do in the slot. We saw what Aaron Williams could do in the slot. I mean, the depth there, I think, is really strong, and I'm excited to see how the outside guys gel. And then I'll give you a segue with the two guys in the back end who, we can't say enough about.
Absolutely. Tao Johnson, Cole Martin are the guys that Jack is referencing. So if DJ Barksdale ends up moving off of nickel, then maybe Cole Martin fills in. Aaron Williams is a guy who we are both very high on, and I know the coaches are high on him too. They're just waiting for him to come back to full health. He was cleared for the spring, but he's dealt with a lot of injuries in his career. He has a really high ceiling as a potential NFL prospect. Things just haven't quite gone his way so far. So they have a good amount of those guys in the secondary, and it's exciting. The pieces could potentially be moved around, but just kind of to reset, we anticipate Roderick Pleasant being one of the cornerback starters, Scooter Jackson being one of the cornerback starters if he's eligible. If not, I think it's going to be Dante Lovett or potentially DJ Barksdale. If Barksdale doesn't play in the slot, could be Aaron Williams, could be Cole Martin. And then in the back end at safety, if Cole Martin stays where he was all spring, it'll be him and Tao Johnson. If not, then it'll be Tao Johnson and maybe Malik Hartford, the Ohio State transfer, who was banged up in the spring. But if he can come back and be healthy, he'll factor into the mix there. Tashawn James from Iowa State, he'll factor into the mix there. Ty Lee, kind of a guy we forget about sometimes because they have so much depth.
Right.
And then Logan Haru, from Santa Margarita was doing his thing, the true freshman early enrollee this spring. Probably a year too soon for him, just with all the bodies in that safety room. But if we were to give an early enrollee freshman MVP, I think it would unanimously be him. He had a really, really good spring, Jack.
Yeah, they call him Easy Money Sniper, number 35. He was phenomenal for a young guy to come in and enroll early and, make the plays that he did. He was all over the place. And like you just mentioned, now's not his time, but never say never. Who knows if with injuries and the season progresses. But yeah, he'll be a player if he stays at UCLA. I could see him being a star, next year or 2 years down the line. But the safety room is stacked. Cole Martin, Tashawn James, Tal Johnson, Malik Hartford, a lot of impact guys. And we know Cole and Tal are scheduled to be the free and the safe and the strong. So whether all these moving parts impacts them, if they bring Cole down to play nickel, then Malik or Tashawn will have to step up. We'll see. But I feel very comfortable on the back end of this defense and really the entire secondary in general.
XOXOXO. I won't read all those, but a lot of XO 19 says it's the defensive line. That's kind of a question mark. That's how we feel as well, especially in the interior. I think some of the edge guys have a chance to be pretty good for the Bruins. We're going to segue to some questions from our message board in a second, but if you have any questions from the YouTube chat, by all means, put them in. I don't know if you have any insight into Brackney's flip. I don't know if it was a money thing. I feel like it was more of just a fit thing at Indiana, and it's hard to say no to the national champs. Just putting you on the spot here for a second, Jack. But any insight into that Brackney flip? I think it's always tough when a guy takes the visit to you and then he takes some other ones and he's committed. He's still, he's still dating around. I guess he's still looking for that perfect match. So that was always a concern. And then, hey, Indiana's damn good right now. So that to me is kind of why he left. I don't think it had as much to do with money as some other recruitments we've seen.
Yeah, I spoke to him the day after or the day of he was wrapping up his UCLA visit. And then I spoke to him the day after he wrapped up at Indiana the following weekend. And I just hearing it in his voice, you could tell. I mean, he even was transparent enough to say that he felt like he made a decision a little too early when he pledged to the Bruins back in middle of April. And so he felt like he owed it to himself and his family to take other visits and just kind of enjoy the whole recruiting process. And that's what he did. He was even this past weekend, he was coming off an official visit to Michigan before he flipped yesterday to Indiana. So he was still definitely shopping around, and he's Bixby, Oklahoma kid from, that part of the country, the middle of the country. And so coming out to LA may not have been his vibe. But I know after talking to him upon his UCLA visit, he enjoyed everything that he saw, and he was really comfortable with the staff and the entire program. But after talking to him then, after he wrapped up his Indiana visit, you could tell there's maybe a little bit more love and, glimmer in his eye that Bloomington kind of felt more of a natural fit for him. And that's what he decided to do.
Question from Enter Xenon: who do you feel will be the most impactful true freshman, if any at all? If safety wasn't so crowded, it would be Logan Haru for sure. I could see him playing special teams potentially if they choose not to redshirt him. We saw wide receiver Kenneth Moore make a nice touchdown catch in the spring game. I don't anticipate him having much of a role on offense. Jack, we both like CJ Lavender at nickel, but the secondary is so loaded that I don't see him playing much. So I would say Haru, just because he was the only guy to get first team reps out of that early enrollee true freshman group. But it's kind of hard to answer that because I don't know if there's anyone who fits that description.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Orozco, if Bongani goes down, they're going to need kickers.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's so hard just to come in as a true freshman and one, get any reps anywhere, and two, be an impact player. So yeah, it's hard to say.
All right. Feel free to keep ripping these YouTube questions, but we will move over now to some of the questions from our message board over at Bruin247.com. We really hope you can subscribe over there if you like what you're hearing today. Whittier Titan wants to know, was it settled who's the starting center and running back in the spring? I saw and heard offensive line coach Smith saying while mic'd up that Sam Yoon's technique was outstanding, and whispers that the coaching staff is enamored with the running back Javion Thomas, his ability to run hard between the tackles, and his pass protection. But all three are seniors, so it'll be interesting to see how they split the reps. He's talking about the running back. So we hit on it a little bit, Jack. I don't know if there is a starting center right now. I think that's going to be between Rebel and Yoon. I personally think it will be Riley Rebel. I've made my case a bunch on these shows. In terms of the starting running back, is it safe to say Anthony Woods kind of felt like the starter coming out of the spring, or am I taking too many liberties there?
For whatever reason, I just kind of like Jet. I liked him personally. I liked him more than what I saw, but I kind of just gravitated more towards him kind of feeling like the RB1 in that moment, so to speak, throughout the spring. But I mean, Woods looked mighty impressive. So like we talked about earlier in the show, like they have three guys and two of them will be featured a lot. There's going to be an odd man out. I don't envision that to be Wayne Knight at all. Even though we didn't see him much in the spring because he was hurt, but he's going to be heavily involved in this offense. So, it really comes down to Woods and Thomas and who that's going to be. I'm leaning more towards Thomas, and I know you're more towards Woods. So that'll be an interesting one to follow in the fall. But yeah, I think we're split here, honestly.
Just based on how they divvied up the reps in the spring, Thomas and Woods got a ton, but it was always Woods who would be out there first. So maybe that means something, maybe it doesn't, but something to pay attention to there. So to answer the question, it has not been settled at either position, and we will cover the crap out of both of those position battles in the fall, during fall camp, in the summer during fall camp, So looking forward to that. And then through the fall, obviously. Track Bruin wants to know, Jack, is Chase Young from De La Salle, the defensive back, still on UCLA's recruiting board in 2027?
To answer that question, they haven't actively been talking. So he's still on the board, theoretically, yes, but there's been no active comms, I'd say, with between those two parties. So I wouldn't expect that.
He seemed like a guy who could get into the class if there was a decommitment. And off the top of my head, I don't think there has been one in the secondary, right?
No.
So that would make sense. Go Big Bruins wants to know, in the recent update on roster weights and number changes, do you have any insight into Riley Rebel's drop in weight to the reported 286 pounds? Is there a strategy behind it? Is it intentional or not? This seems cutting edge if intentional, as I don't think there are any linemen left in D1 under 290. Thank you. So I know people hate USC listening to this. Their center last year, Killian O'Connor, was undersized, and he got hurt, but he was pretty good. So he's listed at 285 pounds. So there is a precedent. He's a good player. He just could never stay healthy. At center, you can be 285 and play. So his weight drop, to me, makes it even more likely that he will be the starting center. I think if he loses out to Yoon, then ideally they would want to play him at guard. Like, I just think Riley Rebel is going to be a starting offensive lineman for UCLA this fall. So his drop in weight, because at the center spot, that's where you can be the lightest. I just, all signs continue to point for me to him being that starting center, even though Sam Yoon is coming back too. But Rebel, he just strikes me as the kind of guy who he got all the first team reps in the spring for the most part. He did have one practice where some of his snaps were a little shaky, but overall I thought he had a really good spring. You're going to have to wrestle that starting job away from him, and he's not going to let it go. I think that's just the kind of player he is, and he has a really close relationship with Chris Smith dating back to their time at James Madison. And it seems to me, even though the coaches won't come out and tell us, that Riley Rebel, the plan for him is to play center just based on what he did in the spring, where he was out there at that spot every single day. And I do think his weight loss was intentional. Jack, you're giving Sam Yoon a shot still. Why?
I am. It just feels like, he was banged up, obviously, so they didn't get to see fully what he was capable of doing. But I've I've always believed in him for whatever reason that is. Just kind of seeing his growth from his time in Westwood overall, and just I'm a firm believer in him as still. And I know there was center issues last year, and UCLA fans can roll their eyes and tell you all about it, but I'm still just sticking up for the guy. But I mean, your analysis with Rebel and the weight loss and everything, it's spot on. Like, all of that is feasible to understand, and you can see why they did that. So it wouldn't surprise me whoever is the starting center come September 5th. But it's like you said, it's going to be a competition that is going to be one of the most exciting ones throughout fall camp, and I'm excited to see how it progresses.
Got another YouTube question here from XOXO19. If Edmonds stays at Ohio State, will we no longer recruit a QB for this class? That is the vibe that both of us are getting. What happens, Jack, if Ohio State is successful and they get another high-profile quarterback in their 2027 class? Maybe it happens right before the early signing period in December. Maybe it happens before that. But if they get another quarterback, based on your conversations with Edmonds camp, is there any chance where that will cause some frustration and lead him back to UCLA? Or are they kind of understanding that that's what Ohio State is going to do and they're going to be okay with that?
I'd say there is always a chance for Brady to flip to UCLA if they do bring a second quarterback along. But from what I was told after this weekend from his visit to Columbus, they're all on the same page. Brady, if they bring in another quarterback, he's okay with that. He's like, they talk through all those scenarios. So there's nothing that's going to surprise him. Whether he ultimately feels comfortable in coming into a class with another quarterback, that will remain to be seen, honestly, until he signs. But I'd say there wouldn't be any surprises coming from Ryan Day and whatnot. But yeah, we'll see how that actually unfolds, because right now they do not have a second quarterback in their class.
I could see that playing out where if Ohio State gets one of the big time guys to flip to them or to commit to them, maybe that opens things back up for Edmonds. But right now it kind of seems like it's Edmonds or bust for UCLA in 2027 at the quarterback spot. And if it's bust, that's okay with them. But I don't anticipate another guy. I think their other dart throw was Colton Nussmeier, and then that didn't end up working out because he committed to Georgia. It's hard. You got to recruit these quarterbacks for so much time, and getting in late with someone, as we saw with Nussmeier, not always easy to do. Okay, UCLA Peter 1 wants to know, since most relationships are already built with the 2027 class, do you think there could be some real surprises and new entries for football recruiting if the season goes well? More 5-star surprises. I could, but it would depend. Like, if UCLA does well, that's great, but I think it depends more on if there's a coaching change at another high-profile school, then that could kind of cause some chaos with their recruiting classes, and maybe UCLA could make up some ground in that way. But like, in terms of the guys who took official visits who could be swayed after a really good season, like maybe Eli Woodard, but he's a 4-star guy. It just depends, I think, on other circumstances that UCLA doesn't necessarily control.
Yeah, that's a great point. A coaching change elsewhere, that would be, a big impetus of a recruit changing his mind, obviously. And if the Bruins do have a strong first year under Chesney, that will help. It would go a long way. But like you mentioned, I'd say, surprise 5 stars that UCLA is involved with, I don't see anything of that nature happening.
Let me just pull up the 5 stars right now. Remember, they do have one in Juju Johnson.
Yes, they do.
Which is more than I thought they would get. So that's very impressive. But yeah, I mean, they haven't even really recruited. I mean, Dante Wright maybe, but I don't think Mario Cristobal is going anywhere, especially after they had a great year last season. So he's kind of the one guy here on this list who they have recruited. So I guess never say never there, but no, outside of him, UCLA really hasn't been involved in the recruitments of any other 5-star guys. So I don't anticipate that, but we know crazy things can happen, and we'll just have to see. Remember, Juju Johnson and Dante Wright are high school teammates, so who's to say what happens? But I don't anticipate Mario Cristobal going anywhere because he is Miami clearly trending in the right direction. So that would be the one 5-star guy to pay attention to, but I don't anticipate that happening. Now, a high-ranked 4-star guy or just some other recruits popping free, lay down in the process? Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Charles Davis on line one. I know UCLA really wants him, so we'll see. Sacrapanthi wants to know, I would like your predictions on where the 4 realistic remaining recruits end up. So that is Miles Baker, who's currently committed to Cal, Brady Edmonds, who we both think will stick with Ohio State, so we don't have to talk about him, Eli Woodard, Cal, Miami, or UCLA, and then Lucas Roa, who he's kind of all over the place right now. So many good options for him: UCLA, Penn State, Oregon, Texas. It's where he took his official visits. So Edmonds and Woodard, Jack, I don't want to speak for you, but we both do not think UCLA gets either of those guys, right?
Fair to say, yes. If you had to pick out of those two who would be more likely, I would give the nod to Edmonds. But like you said, Edmonds, Ohio State, Woodard feels like he's going to Cal.
The other two, it's a little bit more interesting. Miles Baker, committed to Cal, but keeps popping up at UCLA, took an official visit, took an unofficial visit. Maybe he'll play linebacker for the Bruins, which is a different opportunity than Cal is providing for him. I don't want to speak in percentages like 50-50 chance. I would probably say it's more likely than not he sticks with Cal, but UCLA is clearly giving him a lot to think about. So it's either one of those schools for him. And then with Lucas Roa, I know UCLA made a very competitive financial offer, and that's been a sticking point in a good way for him, because if they didn't, I don't know if UCLA would really be considered. Texas and Oregon, we know that they're throwing money around like crazy. It didn't seem like Penn State had the money that would be needed to compete with UCLA. So I don't really know the latest in that, but I would just say Miles Baker and Lucas Roa, there's certainly a chance both those guys end up at UCLA. I have a hard time handicapping it, though, with this crazy world of college football recruiting where things can change day in and day out.
Right. I forget the guy's name, an Ole Miss recruit.
Yeah.
Yesterday, he announced he was shutting his commitment down last night, and then this morning he flips to Colorado. So, I mean, it's until these guys are signed on campus, then you really just never know. But as for those two, I'll say Miles, he flips and he comes to UCLA. And for Lucas, that's a tough one. I might give the nod to Texas right now, but I know UCLA, like you mentioned, their financials are in order to land this guy, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they do. And just getting one of those two between Lucas and Miles would be huge. And I know especially it'd be huge to get Miles, seeing as he already committed to Cal and Tosh Lapole, and they're the buzz around that program right now. And to steal a guy would be massive as well. So we'll see how that plays out. But like you said, he keeps popping around Westwood and showing his face, and it's definitely not a coincidence. So
a good segue here. CFB Truth wants to know, this recruiting cycle has been a world of difference compared to every class dating back to the Mora era. No one can predict how it will turn out 3 or 4 years from now, but in your opinion, are there any obvious and urgent holes still needing to be filled? And I think for both of us, Jack, it's linebacker and tackle, and Baker could be linebacker, Rowe as a tackle. Those are two huge needs. And if they get two players who are looking at very good offers elsewhere and are able to win those battles, that would be massive. But to me, those are the two biggest holes in the class currently, because I don't really look at quarterback as like this big miss on their part, but you want to get a really exciting offensive tackle. Rowe would be that. And after losing Brackney, which is disappointing, if you can replace him with Baker potentially, I think you might take that trade. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. Both those spots. And then I would love to see another defensive lineman, honestly. I don't know who that would be right now. There's really not a lot of buzz at that position. They feel kind of content and good with Montana, George, and the edge guys that they have, God's choice. So, but I'm just, again, a firm believer of you can never have enough of these high school bodies coming into your program. So, I would like to see them add one more big guy on the defensive side in the trenches, especially, the concerns that we were talking about, what this team currently has. To find the guy now and develop him down the line would be great to see. But like you mentioned, tackle and linebacker as well, for sure.
Question from YouTube, Enter Xenon. Do you guys see any current commits getting their ratings bumped up or down by the time National Sign-In Day comes around? 24/7 Sports just did a big rankings update. Juju Johnson got the bump to the 5th star. A few other guys rose. A few guys dropped, which people weren't happy with. The two names, Jack, that I keep coming back to in terms of future risers, God's choice, Boa Bowden, just because he's new to football. If he has a huge year in the Trinity League for Jay Sarah, I could see him getting a bump. And then Kingston Selfie, because of his speed at Calabasas, the wide receiver, 6 foot, 170 pounds, a highly ranked 3-star guy right now. Same with God's choice. I could see both of those guys getting bumped to 4-star status if they have really big years. And Selfie has proven it before. God's choice. He had a nice year last year in his first year of football, but we anticipate him taking a jump. Both of those guys, to me, are guys who would make sense as risers.
Yeah, those are good picks, good names. I agree with you there. A couple other ones I kind of just mentioned them, honestly, was George and Montana, the two defensive linemen. I know George took a little bit of a drop, if you want to call it. Well, he did take a drop in the latest top 247 rankings. He's still in there, but took a little bit of a fall. But I think he's just in line for just a humongous senior season. And then Montana is someone who I always thought was kind of just underrated. Same with George. I think he's going to have a monster senior season for the Mater Dei Monarchs. And with Mike Davis Jr. behind him, that'll make his job easier. And maybe he'll get a bump because of that. So, yeah, I'm just looking forward to watching those guys this fall.
I could see Thurman Lyles getting a bump too.
Yeah.
Another guy to pay attention to. We have so many questions. Thank you to everyone who submitted these. Frank Show wants to know, with Brackney gone and with Baker uncertain, is UCLA looking to bring in another linebacker? Who are the potential names? We both agree on this. If UCLA gets Baker, they could play him at linebacker, and he seems to be like the replacement. And we don't really have any other names behind him. I reached out to someone in Isaiah Phelps's camp. He's a 2027 linebacker from Oxnard Pacifica. He's committed to San Diego State. He's locked in with San Diego State. UCLA was in on him. Then they kind of cooled on him. Same with USC. So he ends up going to San Diego State. He was a logical replacement for Brackney just because of the geography, and he's a good player, but it doesn't seem like he is that guy. So right now, Jack, it kind of seems like Baker or bust, but we'll have to see.
Agreed.
Next question, up your alley, and we had a chat or a comment in the chat on YouTube about this too. Are Viola Vu and Sam Yoon good friends? It sounds like Sam Yoon has a lot of friends on the baseball team, huh?
Yeah, they have just a great friendship. Not just Vi and Sam, but Rock, Roman, Dean, all these guys. They love Sam Yoon, and not a running joke, but like you always hear them kind of just screaming his name randomly in places. And then on social media, they're super tight as well. I know they're doing the student athlete awards, and they all took a group picture with Sam, just the entire baseball team, with a Yoon in the middle and holding up his award. So those guys are boys. Pretty cool to see from team to team. So it's cool.
That is really cool. Chico73 wants to know, can you estimate UCLA's NIL? If not money, then ranking nationwide. So everyone who opted into the rev share has $20.5 million for all the athletes. So I would bet that at a minimum, and probably more, but at a minimum, 10 million of that is going to the football team. So you can start there. Bob Chesney wouldn't take the job at UCLA if he wasn't promised some concrete financial backing. So my estimate is that this year's roster is a $20 to $25 million roster. Moving forward, the hope would be to get it to 30, 35 next year. And Chesney has talked about how eventually he wants a $50 million roster just because that's where these things are trending. One interesting tidbit I've heard, Jack, is that Chesney is recruiting and acting right now like he'll be able to get more money later. So I think, of course, he believes in himself, but like, say they go out and win 8 games, that's the way to get donors excited who aren't already excited about Chesney. But like, he's kind of, the way it's been explained to me, and some people in some of those donor circles have been talking, it's like this guy, not that the money isn't there right now, but he's anticipating having more moving forward. And I think it's a smart strategy. You gotta do what you gotta do to get the best players. And that's clearly what they're doing here in 2027. So I do anticipate the roster being more expensive as time goes on. And Chesney, just based on everything that we've seen with him, I anticipate him being able to get that money where, look, if I didn't think he would be able to do that, I'd tell you, but this guy, just the way he is, I mean, I'm a believer in this guy, and I think most people are.
Yeah, you nailed it. He's, in a sense, betting on himself. But you mentioned, he's not taking this job without being guaranteed and promised these resources and these dollars, more specifically. And then, yeah, if he wins, there will be more money, and he believes he's going to do that, and I believe he's going to do that, and this roster will just get more and more expensive, but more and more funded as time goes on. So they're in a good spot.
The 4 letters says, my job, host the recruiting dinners for parents. This stuff is full of rock stars. Yeah, a lot of genuine people on that staff. And I do think rock star is a fair way to describe Chesney before he's ever coached a game at UCLA. We have a question about how many wins this team will have. So I guess I can just go to it now. CFB Truth, with all the roster turnover, coaching changes, and everything else that happens annually in college football, do you think the projection of 6 wins is accurate, low, or high for UCLA this year? I think 6 is a good floor for this team. That's where I put the floor. If they go 5-7, I would be disappointed. And the reason why I think they have that floor when in years past it's been nothing close to that, it's because of Chesney. This guy has climbed the ranks. This guy knows what he's doing. He's hit the ground running. He just brings this ability where, like, this confidence where I feel like 6 wins is the floor because of him. And of course, you're only as good as your players. They have some nice players, but like, if they don't get to 6 wins with this guy, based on what I've seen so far in the first year, I would be disappointed. So I think that projection is maybe a little bit low, but it's accurate. And the biggest reason why, to me, is because of Bob Chesney.
That's totally fair to say. A 6-6 season would feel, just kind of, I don't know, don't want to say flat, but I think just with all this buzz and excitement and everything that this whole program's been doing since this whole staff has been doing since they got here, like 6 wins might feel disappointing, which is crazy to say, a year ago, 2 years ago, from where this program looked like it was heading, honestly, and not a great direction. But yeah, 6, I'd say, is the floor. And then we'll see, you and I haven't made our final predictions yet. There's still a ways to go until we do so, but yeah, 6, we'll start there and then work our way up. I think that's fair to say.
We will just have to see. Remember, the Big Ten schedule, while there are some challenging games, it could have been worse, so that plays into my prediction as well. But yeah, we'll have to see. I'm going to dive into some opponent previews coming up this week and into the summer, so once I get a closer look at some of these opponents for UCLA, I'll be able to have a better idea of where I think the Bruins stack up. Johnny98 wants to know, when looking for offensive linemen in high school, it seems like a hard position to project. What are the traits you look to most to project future impact? I would imagine it varies between tackle and guard, especially tackle. I bring this up because I just read the Aiden Ray, commitment breakdown. How would you prioritize functional movement, fluidity, bend, coordination versus athleticism, foot speed, power versus size, frame, potential, and skills? I just threw so much at you. Johnny just threw so much at you, Jack, but answer that the best way you can.
Yeah, so recruiting offensive linemen, I'd say it's kind of one of the more trickier spots, honestly, because one, you're not looking at a guy if he doesn't have the size or frame right off the bat. You can see what he can project or where he can grow or where he can put on more, mass. But if these guys aren't at least, 6'3", kind of feels like the floor really for most Power 4 linemen now. And I remember back my senior year at Servite, we had a big left tackle, Clayton Johnston, now Clayton Bradley. He was recruited to USC. And our offensive line coach was Frank Khalil, and his sons were Matt and Ryan Khalil, both, star offensive linemen for the Trojans as well. And one of all these different O-line coaches, college coaches would come in, and one of the things would be they'd ask, Clayton what his foot size was. And so it was kind of just a funny thing where they kind of start with, okay, how big are your feet? And then they kind of work their way up from there. And then obviously they'll get the technical stuff okay, let's throw you out there and let's see how you're doing. What are we looking for? It kind of starts with your base. You don't want to be pushed around at all, whether that's in pass pro or, in the run game. So they'll start with your base, see how you move. I'd say more technical things, those can be, coached and taught as you get to the next level, but they kind of just want to see, if you have the size and the mobility. They don't want to, recruit a stiff. You want to be able to move a little. Not saying you need to be a remarkable athlete, because, for a guy as big as these offensive linemen are, you're not going to have not everyone can be a freak athlete. So it's just a combination of all that and kind of just how comfortable you are with the kid. And I'd say, yeah, it's a tricky position to recruit because, there's, like you mentioned, all those things do go into it, but a lot of those are coachable. And yeah, there's my best answer for you.
Amazing. One last football one and then a few off-topic ones. UCLA Peter 1 wants to know, have any recruits been able to expand on how much better the film breakdowns are with UCLA versus other places? What about on-field instruction from coaches? Do they voice comparisons at all? What about mental side and development? Lauren Betts' mental health help from UCLA was noted several times throughout the team's championship run. Is this spoken of at all for the football program?
Yeah, so I can say, I don't want to compare because I haven't heard guys specifically, compare different coaching staffs with different schools, but all the recruits that I've talked to, the 27 guys, the 28 guys, the 2029 guys, whenever they get a guy on campus, the staff, they'll put him in the film room first, right when they get there. It seems like, especially with the invite-only workout they just had for a bunch of the 28 guys last week, but they'll sit down with them. They'll do a whole film session. They'll install plays for these guys that they already have in their offense for, the quarterbacks and wide receivers, for example, and they'll, show them what Nico and Brian Rowe and them did during the spring, and they'll sit down for a good bit. Then they'll take it out to the practice field, and then they'll execute and call those plays. And I've heard from, what seems like every recruit that I've talked to, just how detail oriented that this whole entire staff is with, no wasted movements with every split, every inch. It kind of seems like they want to be, on the money, on the target with all this stuff. And they don't mess around when it comes to their film sessions. It's pretty intense. And, you have to be paying attention. You got to know what you're doing. And the staff, they're installing that in you. So they're not just throwing you in the deep end or whatnot, but, it's a really hands-on approach that the staff that they're kind of becoming known for, honestly. And then that all translates to, like I said, out onto the field. So I've been super impressed with what I've heard and what we've seen too from practices and inside that building. And then to answer the second part of the question, when it comes to your mentals and the mental part of the game, this program its resources are phenomenal. They have, mental health coaches, psychological coaches, guys that they talk to, and just, to keep, because a lot of this is all between the ears, right? What goes on in the head. And I know that that department specifically is top notch.
Two final questions, not football related. First one is a baseball question for Jack. Bruin Baller 925 wants to know, what's Coach Savage's mindset heading into next year? The pitching staff seems solid, but is he targeting any more big bats to replace the significant offense that the team is losing?
Yeah, so no secret that, what feels like the whole lineup is going to be gone just in a couple of weeks when the draft is July 11th, I believe. So, and the strength of the 2027 Bruins are definitely going to be on the mounds with a rotation that I would guess includes Angel Cervantes, Zach Strickland, and Wyland Moss as your three starters, which don't know if you can find a better three in the country. So, a lot of the questions is going to be on the offense after losing Rock, Vi, Roman, Dean, Gasparino, Peyton Brennan. There's a lot to replace. They got two transfers already, from a guy from Desert College and then a guy from Creighton that brings some pop, at least some, experience quality ABs. But yeah, I'd say just give it some time. The transfer portal closes at the end of this month. We'll see if they can get any more pieces there. Don't want to, give any names out, but there's a lot happening. So I'd say, yeah, just wait. And then with the high school kids coming in too, I'd be excited, but it's hard to replace what's probably going to be the number one overall draft pick.
Yeah, a lot of great draft picks from this past year's team. Last question, World Cup one. I've been loving the World Cup, Jack. I don't know about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been amazing. Fat Jack with a PH wants to know, who do you think has a better chance of making the knockout rounds? Cape Verde or Scotland? And it has to be Cape Verde, right? Because they play Saudi Arabia either tomorrow or the next day. And I think a tie, assuming the result in that group is a win for whatever the best team is, I forget, they will get through. And Scotland has to play Brazil and probably has to get a result against Brazil, which I don't think is going to happen. So Cape Verde is my pick.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm looking at the standings right now. Scotland, they're 1-1 in their first two games against Morocco and Haiti. After I think they lost to Morocco over the weekend. So yeah, I think Cape Verde definitely has a better shot just going off of that and their different groups. But I mean, yeah, the World Cup fever, it's just been so fun. I wouldn't consider myself a soccer guy at all, but just having it in, the United States and Canada and Mexico really, but just seeing all these different countries come in and just experience what we have to offer with, different cities and stadiums and just all these viral videos of, the Scots taking over Boston or, the Dutch and Texas. Like, it's just been so awesome to see and to follow. And then not to mention, our own boys, they're kicking butt right now. And it's been awesome. And I don't know if we felt this excited about a USA team in quite some time. So I'm bought in. I got World Cup fever and I'm excited for the next couple of weeks.
I'm with you. The event has been amazing. I was against expansion, kind of like I was against NCAA tournament expansion, but can't deny how great it's been because it's just more games and it's awesome. And
Yeah.
I think part of why it's so great too, you mentioned it, the US has been doing amazing and the legends are doing amazing. Messi, 5 goals in 2 games. Ronaldo had 2 goals at halftime of today. We were doing the show for the second half. I'm not sure what happened afterwards. Holland is doing his thing. Mbappe is doing his thing. And I think the fact that it was in Qatar a couple of years ago and the fans couldn't really get there and it was in the winter,
Right.
This is the way it should be. So all of those reasons are why it's been so great. And I used to be a huge soccer guy when I was younger. I still enjoy the Premier League, but I've kind of fallen off with it a little bit. And this is getting me all the way back in. I'll tell you that. This has just been phenomenal. And having the games on at night here, like the time zone stuff is huge on the West Coast. It's been so great.
We're the winners.
Watching all these games. Yeah. Okay. That's enough about the World Cup. Thank you for indulging us there. Don't have any other questions on YouTube. And I just refreshed the thread on our board and I don't see any others. We did have a few that we need to get some more information on before we answer. So if you're like, hey, I asked a question and they didn't get to it, it falls in either 2 camps. We don't know, or it's a bad question. So figure out which one you're in. But Jack, great job, man. That was about 80 minutes here of live podcasting. Let's catch our breath and get back to it next week. But always great doing a show with you, man. Really enjoy it.
Likewise. This was fun. We hit on a myriad variety of topics and yeah, I'm out of breath. So
yeah, that must mean it's time to go. There we go. I think I got to double click that banner to get it going. Now I know that. As always, thanks for watching on YouTube and listening wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out Bruin247.com for the latest wall-to-wall coverage of UCLA athletics. He's Jack Savage. I'm Connor Morrissette. Subscribe to Bruin247.com right now for 60% off. And you get Paramount Plus, and you get Jack and me and Chris and Mike and our interns who are doing an amazing job. We're really excited about this season, so hope you can subscribe. Thanks so much for listening and watching the Word Around Westwood. We will see you next time.
Peace.